Good morning, Stokastic baseball fans. How you guys doing out there? We're pushing the good morning. It's 11:20-ish. By the time you guys watch this, it'll probably be the afternoon, but jumping in a little bit late on the MLB strategy show for Saturday, October 22nd. I had the NBA show with Adam this morning, so that was a lot of fun. Just put together the old baseball model here and ready to dive into this one. And we're going to go game by game. We've got a two-gamer today. Happy about that. Game 3 of the ALCS, game 4 of the NLCS. Astros coming into the Bronx. My Yankees with their back up against the wall. Phillies with a nice little lead in their series, playing against the San Diego at home in Philadelphia. Couple interesting games. Some interesting pitching to get into. So we'll dig through. We'll go like we've done with the two gamers for the last couple of days. We'll go game by game, but we'll look at the pitching and then we'll look at the hitting. We'll kind of talk about all of it, all big miasma of nonsense. I don't know. I don't plan these things. I just kind of wing it, you guys, if I'm being totally honest. Promo code Hardwood is the sponsor today, internally sponsored by Stokastic with the promo code Hardwood. If you guys haven't used it yet, if you've been ignoring me, if you've been ignoring everybody else on all these shows, you're just missing out. That gets you $10 access to 10 days of Stokastic Plus Platinum with promo code Hardwood, HARDWOOD, all one word, all caps. Use it. Go check it out. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes, but let's dive right in. We've got the Astros and the Yanks, the early game loaded up here. The pitching situation is somewhat interesting. I seem to have neglected to load up ownership, but I'll try and do that while we're talking through it here. It's sort of interesting on the pitching side of things here because we've got Garrett Cole going for the Yankees, the ace of the Yankees pitching staff, pitching for basically the season for them at this point. But Garrett Cole also kind of stands tall on this slate specifically because looking at the other guys, we've got Christian Javier going for the Astros. Javier hasn't pitched since he went, I think, an inning and change in the first round of the playoffs. So it's been a handful of days since he pitched. I think that was on the 11th. So 11 days since he's pitched. You've got Bailey Falter going for the Phillies. He's yet to pitch in the postseason. And you've got Mike Clevenger going for the Padres, who is a not reliable to get too deep into games a lot of the time. So if we're looking for secure innings, it's basically Garrett Cole and a lot of question marks. So I think that's just kind of interesting right out of the gate here. Let me drop this ownership in here real quick. Should have gotten that out of the way before the show. Completely forgot about it, but we'll do that and we'll see it appear in just a moment. I'm clicking through over on Stokastic. Again, guys, if you want to get access to all this stuff behind the scenes, the ownership projections, the just player point projections, the various tools like top stacks and top pitchers, top stacks for football, every different sport we cover. Check out that old platinum plan with the promo code Hardwood. And as we can see, the ownership is now populated. Covered that pretty well, I think. What a pro. So taking a look at some of these numbers on the ownership side, we can see Garrett Cole obviously pulling 80-ish% ownership on the DK slate, 58% owned on the FanDuel board. It just makes all the sense in the world that he's going to be that popular. He is the most secure pitching situation on the board today. Looking at Cole's numbers for the season, 202 thirds, a 32.4% strikeout rate, 6.3% walks, a 278 xFIP. Everybody knows Garrett Cole is probably going to give up a home run every time he starts at this point. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but he does tend to give up the long ball. It's usually a solo shot, 2-run homer doesn't hurt him all that badly, but a 4.16% home run rate on 39.9% hard hit, 9.5% barrel rate allowed. If we're looking for warts on Garrett Cole, that's what it is. But he's a dominant ace caliber starter. 14.3% swinging strike rate for the season, 31.9% CSW. All of these numbers jibe with what he's been over his career. Last year, 33.5% strikeout rate, 14.5% swinging strike, 32.1% CSW. He's right on who he has been for the last few years. This is a top tier pitcher. So no qualms about going to him for the DK price. No qualms about going to him at 10-5 on FanDuel. I just think you can swallow the ownership and ride with Garrett Cole here and not really worry about it. On the Astros side, I mentioned Christian Javier, not a guy who tends to go too deep into starts to begin with and hasn't really pitched in 11 days. That said, he did have a nice season, 148 2/3 innings in 25 starts, 33.2% strikeout rate for him, and 8.9% walks. Puts a few too many guys on base via the walk, but he's been good in terms of his whip. Only 0.95. A 0.95 whip with an 8.9% walk rate is actually pretty impressive in terms of guys getting on via base hits. He does not allow a lot of hard hit. He does not allow a tremendous barrel rate, 2.91% home run rate. Very good pitcher. Induces a nice swinging strike rate, has a comparable strikeout rate to Garrett Cole, a little bit higher this season, actually. So Javier is right there. The only question with Javier is he's going up against the Yankees, of course, in Yankee Stadium, but it's mostly around how deep is he going to go in this game. Astros have a pretty dominant bullpen. If they have their boot on the neck of the Yankees, I don't think they're going to let Javier pitch more than like 5 innings. If they've got a lead, I can see them going to that pen and really trying to, put the Yankees away in this game. So that's the question mark with Javier. He's obviously, I think he stands tall as the number 2 option on the board on the DK slate where you need 2 pitchers. I definitely like him better than Bailey Falter or Mike Clevenger. So I do think you need to go to him. I think he's going to be a part of the conversation here. It's just not the greatest spot. I could easily see a short start, but I think there's enough on the bone, particularly on DK, to get there. Probably my number 2 on FanDuel, 9,200. He's 35% owned. I don't love it because we're chasing the quality start, the win bonus and the quality start bonus. Garrett Cole, the more likely candidate to get there, despite a brutal matchup against the playoff Astros here. But I just do think there's a little bit more upside for Cole. But Javier's, the number 2 guy there. Switching over to the next games real quick here. Taking a look at Clevenger, obviously pulling a ton of ownership on the DK slate, 42% owned on DK, 8,800 and 5.8% owned on FanDuel. That feels a little light maybe for the ownership on FanDuel. Like if we're hunting around for an opportunity, that could be a spot where we might want to take a look. I don't like the matchup against the Phillies in Philly. I don't like the idea of him pitching more than 5 innings. I don't think we're going to get that depth of start. He was not the old Mike Clevenger when we saw him this year either. 114 and a third innings, only an 18.8% strikeout rate, a 4.76 xFIP, putting too many guys on base, allowed a good amount of power with a 4.12% home run rate. Not really a good CSW to speak of here. So there are definitely some flaws with Clevenger that it makes it concerning, but I think it's just 5.8% ownership on that FanDuel slate. I think you can throw a few darts at least if you're playing 150 lineups. Maybe not the prize pool or the buy-in level to justify playing that many lineups, but if you are, that would potentially be an under-owned pitching opportunity to go to there. Again, do not expect him to pitch more than 4 or 5 innings here, and significant opportunity for the Phillies to blow him up. But I think, out of the 4 pitchers that we've got to work with, I do think he's at least on the board at that ownership level. Bailey Falter on the other side of this one, yet to pitch in the playoffs, 21.2% strikeout rate over 84 innings in the regular season, 4.13 xFIP, a 1.21 whip. The issue with Falter is we know for sure he is only expected to go once through the batting order, and then the Phils are going to hand off to the pen. So I don't expect much from Bailey Falter here. I don't think he's really rosterable. He's cheap. It's not like you're spending much money on him, but I just think, one turn through the batting order, we're talking about 3 innings, if that. So I don't love the opportunity for Bailey Falter here. There was some thought that Noah Syndergaard might get this start, but he did not get the start. They're going to Falter. I don't know that Syndergaard's going to come in for any of this. I think they probably want to keep him in their pocket just in case. So I don't expect him to be the long man here or anything. It's not reported that way anyway from what I've seen. I expect him to just go straight into the regular old bullpen. So not much opportunity around the Phillies pitching staff, I don't think here. And they're willing to take the shot and go, Falter for 3 and then hand it off to the bullpen, just given that they've got Wheeler and Nola for, any future games here. So I think it's an interesting spot in terms of maybe some potential for offense in this game, but I'm not really excited about the pitching opportunities in this one. We'll talk about the hitters when I finish telling you guys one more time about the old promo code Hardwood. What you get with Hardwood is that was clunky. You should have thought about that a little bit. What you get with this promo code is access to Stokastic Plus Platinum for 10 days, for your first 10 days for only $10. And that's pretty key. We've got all the sports going on. It was one of the sports equinoxes that people like to talk about the other day, where all 4 major sports were going on at the same time: baseball, basketball, hockey, and football. It's only apparently happened 27 times in history. Who knew? I guess that's because baseball goes a little bit later these days. So it's to say that there's just so much going on right now. It's foolish to not have the platinum plan. It really is, especially when we're basically giving it away for $1 a day for your first 10 days. Platinum gets you access to every single sport that we cover and to every single tool and data point on the site. Fantasy Cruncher is not included. It's always a paid add-on because we don't own Fantasy Cruncher, but you can always work with our team after your promo period is up here after your first 10 days to add Fantasy Cruncher to any subscription that you've got. One more time, promo code Hardwood, HARDWOOD, all caps, all one word, 10 days of access to Stokastic Plus Platinum for only $10. That's $1 a day, gang. Make sure to check it out. Jumping back into the hitter side of things, Astros and the Bombers playing in the Bronx. Obviously, must-win situation for the Yankees. They've got their ace on the hill. They've got to scratch out a few runs here. The Astros kind of on cruise control coming in. Hey, they dropped this one. They've got plenty of upside still to come in this series. So less pressure for the Astros, of course. Not that we like to talk about narratives like that or anything. I'm just kind of winding up this game. But the Stros going up against Garrett Cole is the big obstacle here. We know about the quality of this lineup. We know about the Jordan Alvarez's, the Jose Altuve's, probably still a little underappreciated for what he does on the field. Alex Bregman having a nice postseason. Kyle Tucker, Yuli Gurriel, and Chas McCormick, my guys from the bottom of the lineup. Trey Mancini hiding kind of in the bottom of this lineup. There's just so much to go to here. You can put these guys together in a lot of different combinations. They're not drawing immense ownership because of that matchup against Cole. So for a wish it was a 4-gamer. For a 2-game slate with only 4 teams to choose from, this is light ownership on star caliber players like these guys. This is light ownership on star caliber players, particularly, you get to a 3.2% owned Yuli Gurriel, a sub 10% Trey Mancini, a sub 10% Chas McCormick, a little higher on the DK slate on each of those guys, but I mean, totally worth it. So I think that's a key spot to get to. Not sure why the DK salaries are not populating. I might have pasted that in the wrong spot here, but apologies about that. But we will continue on just talking about these players. Gurriel and McCormick from the bottom of the lineup are guys that I do bring up probably too much for their overall quality, but they deliver, from time to time, and it's always at low ownership. It's always at a reasonable price. So those are guys who make the star caliber players in a stack from this team work. Those are guys that help you get to the Alvarez Altuve part of the lineup, the Tucker part of the lineup. Obviously, we want Alvarez and Tucker in our lineups here. Big lefty home run hitters, 37 home runs for Alvarez, 30 for Kyle Tucker, a 306 ISO for the season for Alvarez is just bananas, a 221 ISO for Kyle Tucker right there. So those are home run hitters that you want to have against Garrett Cole, who is probably going to give one up in this game. But yeah, the Astros probably a little bit under-owned for their overall quality. So you can focus in on that, make some weird decisions as far as your stack combinations, small slate, small fields. So if you put something unique together, you're probably going to be out on your own. Over on the Yankees side of things, a little bit more popularity for the Bombers. Makes some sense. They're cheap. They've got some upside. Obviously, we know there are some extreme home run hitters. They're going up against Christian Javier and potentially some guys out of the Astros pen here. So we can see some quality potential for the Yankees. What I like is Giancarlo Stanton going under-owned at 10.8%, 31 home runs on the season. We know that this is one of the premier power hitters in all of baseball. When he's right, there is nobody who hits the ball as hard as he does. So I can get to some low-owned Giancarlo Stanton, Oswaldo Cabrera. We saw Oswald Peraza in the lineup. I put the IKF version of this lineup in, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Peraza in there again, just for, it's a more dynamic player, a better player at this point. IKF is not a good player. Jose Trevino, obviously a serviceable catcher from down bottom at 11 home runs. I prefer Higgy. We've talked about that a number of times just on his contact profile. Higgy, the better bat, but Trevino, probably the better catcher overall. So we'll see who ends up in the lineup here. The obvious names like Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Josh Donaldson, Giancarlo Stanton. You can play those guys in any combination versus basically any hitter. We're not really breaking any new ground there. If we're hunting for home runs, Aaron Judge at 16.32 is the leader in this game on either side, followed by Stanton, then Jordan Alvarez. So if we're looking for home run hitters, those are 3 very, very obvious names, but they're shining through in terms of where the home run model sees them. So I think those are guys worth getting to despite any popularity pricing concerns. Taking a look at the hitters in the next game. Padres, fairly standard version of their lineup here. Probably going to get Will Myers in there again instead of Josh Bell because the Phillies are going with a lefty again. Phils were, I mentioned Noah Syndergaard was potentially going to get this start, but they like the idea of throwing a lefty against some of the lefty bats that are in this lineup. The manager was talking about that a little bit. So it's an interesting spot, obviously going up against a pitcher who does allow runners on base. an okay strikeout rate at 21.2, but plenty of contact there, an aggressively bad home run rate for him for the season. So I could see some upside here for sure for the Padres. They're drawing some ownership around the top bats in that lineup, of course. Ha-Seong Kim, a lot more popular than we've seen him over the last few days as a correlation piece leading into the Juan Soto, Manny Machado part of this lineup. Brandon Drury, guy I talk about a lot on these various shows, has had a very, very nice year, made some legitimate changes to his swing plane, and that's what resulted in those 28 home runs. People who noticed that in the early part of the season really benefited from picking him up in season long, using him in DFS when other people weren't when he started the year on the Reds, and he carried it through. He had a nice return for the investment on the Padres from when they acquired him. Bottom of the lineup, Dirksen Profar, Trent Grisham, Austin Nola, frisky enough players, guys that you can work in and out of lineups if you need to. So definitely a spot worth getting to, I think. You know what I must have done? I must have loaded up by accident. I grabbed the wrong sheet from the DK board because it looks like I've got the single game info in here for the pods with the pricing and the positioning. So looks like I grabbed the wrong sheet, throwing this together real quick off of DK, and that's why we didn't have pricing on the other teams. Ignore these pricing; these are showdown prices. We'll do that. Now you guys can't see them. So, and again, with a slate this small, we're not as concerned about price. We know who the popular and pricey players are going to be on a slate like this anyway. That's why I kind of just put the ownership up here and leave it for you guys. But apologies about not having the pricing listed. On the Phillies side of things, we know that we've got a great home run hitter in Kyle Schwarber. We've got an excellent superstar caliber player and Bryce Harper to work with. I like this lineup a lot, the way they string together lefty righty with Rhys Hoskins, JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos up at the top of the lineup. We've gotten production from Alec Boehm, Bryson Stott, Brandon Marsh at the bottom of the lineup. It's a team, I've talked about this lineup since the playoffs started, and I've been doing these shows. I really like the counting stats that you get from the bottom of the lineup. I'm going to keep banging that drum because these guys are cheap. They're under-owned. 10 home runs, 12 stolen bases for Stott, 10 and 13 for Gene Segura, 11 and 10 for Brandon Marsh, all in sub 500 plate appearances too. So nice little seasons from those guys. Not necessarily the best run creators with some of them, sub average in terms of WRC plus, but you do get home run upside. You do get DFS upside out of these guys at the bottom of the lineup. They make things go. They're too low owned and they're cheap. So you can put them together with the stars, the Kyle Schwarbers, the Bryce Harpers from the top of the lineup, kind of like what we're talking about with the Astros, right? The bottom of these lineups makes things work with some of these teams. The Phillies are definitely one of those teams. It's a dynamic lineup. Excuse me. So really like getting to the fills there. If I was picking one bat from this team, Kyle Schwarber probably stands tall in terms of the home run rate going up against Clevenger here, guy who does allow home runs. Big lefty bat. Makes a lot of sense to me that Kyle Schwarber's got potential to go deep, and he just absolutely obliterates the ball when he hits them. So always fun to watch, always fun to have in your roster. But I really like the Philly side of this one going up against Clevenger and probably into the Padres bullpen fairly early here. So get to some Phil's bats. Mix and match. It's a short slate. I know we're talking about a lot of obvious stuff here and just kind of talking through some of the stats. It's a matter of landing on the right combination. Spin the wheel, land on a combination, drop it in, spin the wheel, land on a combination, drop it in on the next lineup, and just keep putting things together and build out a whole portfolio of lineups that make sense, that are getting to, as best you can, some unique combinations, as best you can, some leverage plays, and see if you can make it work. Small tournaments, small payouts, playoff baseball with everything else going on. But that's where we're at this point of the season, gang. Make sure you're checking out the promo code Hardwood to get over and get onto the platinum plan for 10 days for $10 for your first 10 days there. And that'll get you access to all these sports that do have the giant prize pools going on right now, like basketball, like football tomorrow. A lot of stuff going on there. Promo code Hardwood. I appreciate everybody hanging out with me to talk through baseball here. I'm going to jump out and go about my day, probably get a little bit more coffee in me before things continue on with lineup builds. But thank you very much, gang. Hit the like, the subscribe down there. Show me a little love. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me.